Welcome to another edition of this very special Hornbill TV Explainer, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Elnguli. Nagaland is currently engaged in enthusiastic discussions about the advantages and the disadvantages of probably the most common and essential condiments on the planet: salt, nimok, tata salt, nimok. Curiously, it isn't for health or medical reasons in any way, but this time it is for something that we all have come to hate and bitterly hate: extortion. Extortion, something that makes our blood boil all the time, every time we hear about reports of people being threatened, of business people being shot, of people coming in to demand something that does not belong to them, but something that is legally yours and you're not obligated to pay them. Extortion is a word so hated that just someone mentioning it makes the Naga blood boil. One day, maybe in the next about 200 years, history and historians will probably say the evil of extortion seems to have become a rich Naga cultural practice. Maybe after 200 years, people might say that, oh, these people 200 years ago, they practiced a lot of extortion activities and there was no one stopping them, no police, no government, and this was very common. That's what they're going to say in their school textbooks. The context of this explainer at Hornbill TV today, ladies and gentlemen, is already in place. Extortion, how does it affect you? If you are a young person and yet to work, you probably might not really be experiencing it at its most fundamental level, or you might not feel it directly, but your parents, your relatives, especially those who are working, professionals, working people including the progress, business people, daily wage earners and laborers, and of course politicians too. Everyone whose participation and contribution to the society directly interplay with the economic objectives of the society, they are the ones that will feel the impact of extortion more directly than those who are not engaged in the economic activities of the community or contributing in any way, ladies and gentlemen. This is not to say that people who don't work or people who are unemployed are not affected by extortion. I am speaking in terms of direct monetary impact on the individual and the society. So now, this is the reason why for the first time ever in Nagaland, the people of the state are passionately discussing salt, nimok, is this. In another case of force in Nagaland, some underground cadres reportedly belonging to an NACN faction allegedly stuffed salt into a large truck's fuel tank yesterday. I think it was at 5th Mile. So it so happened that the owner of the truck reportedly refused to pay so-called tax. The anger and the outrage on social media from the public ever since the report came out is deep, and you can see a lot of anger in the comment sections on YouTube, on Facebook. People are forwarding the images and the visuals on WhatsApp, and you can feel the anger of our people that these things continue to happen unchecked. And for those of us who continue to suffer because of such activities, the rage, the anger and the outrage is understandable. We have been wishing, of course, for a long time that the government and the police authorities, our community leadership would really take a moral stand on this and sit together to address this problem at the earliest at both the policy and enforcement levels, because I think the press releases and the condemnations are not working anymore. So today we're going to talk about some of the ways how extortion works. So what are the ways extortion and illegal taxation affect you? In what way does it impact your life and your family and your society's character? your society's personality. You might not know, but there are many ways it affects you, ladies and gentlemen. And the way it affects your family, your friends, people, and society is tremendous. It's in so many ways. We are talking not only about effects in monetary terms here, we are also going to talk about some of the general macroeconomics that is associated with the impact of extortion activities on people and the society. Let's examine them. Extortion is the wrongful, illegal, unlawful use of force to gain monetary benefits or things, ladies and gentlemen. I think that is something you are very much clear about, and even if someone did not define it for you, it is obvious by your reaction to it, by your sense of outrage and violation to your livelihood and to your earnings. You already know the definition, so I won't give you that much of it. The force the extortionist use can be actual, it can be implied, implied, or an actual threatened force when they actually use force. So that's the definition of extortion. The use of violence or tactics of intimidation is the most common method of coercion that is employed by people to extract money illegally from you, especially business persons or establishments, or even against government departments and government apparatuses. And I think these criminal activities are very common in Latin America too, and of course India. Extortion generally involves a threat that is made to the victim's person, his life or property, or to the life of his or her family and his or her friends. The threats are not only about causing harm to people or their property, ladies and gentlemen. It can also be in the form of threats to cause harm to your reputation, which in this case is called blackmail. Or the threat could be in the form of unfavorable government action. And I think even government establishments in Nagaland, we don't have that many instances when government establishment and enforcement agencies have actually used threat in that sense, but it is common in some of the bigger states of India where the government establishments and authorities have explicitly used threat to push forward an agenda. It could be for money, it could be pushing developmental contracts, it could be aspects related to welfare programs where they have used threats just to push their objectives forward. In yesterday's instance, the threat was to destroy the engine of the truck, which was sadly carried out. Once you have salt in your engine, your vehicle is practically useless in that case. So I believe that the perpetrators of that crime stuffed the fuel tank of the truck at 5th mile. And then there are also other ways that you can extort. Attempts to extort can either be a one-time event, such as by certain individuals who attempt to extract large sums of money from well-known people or celebrities. And I think we have had instances in the past in Nagaland when some people claiming to be a certain celebrity, a musician, or even someone claiming to be a chief secretary, and also there was a minister whose profile was going around on Facebook, a fake Facebook profile, asking people for money. That's also another form of extortion, although the use of force was not involved in that case, but that's also another form. Threats can also be more widespread, and like extortion activities carried out in an organized manner by organizations. So it is not only by individuals, but it is also by organizations who are organized, and they have an organized network of extortion activities going on. So this could include not only extra-state actors, it could also be public and community organizations such as youth and student organizations who might also be engaging in extortion activities. In other words, exacting tax that is not due to them, that is not legal to them to be taxing people. And tax without even having any kind of service provided for that. Recently, I came across someone giving a small piece of paper to a driver of a vehicle there, and it was taxed for road use. So I asked them, kila tax ase do? And then it was the name of a local youth organization, and itu rasta parking kuriala aru rasta chulala tax ase. So itu rasta apni kan bunaishe? Then he said, no, only moi kan la area ase. Only rasta apni kan bunaishe na bunanai. Na government bra bunaishe. Then moi kan bra bunanai. Only moi kan la area te ase, moi kan tax lo ase. That is the kind of mentality we have. We exact tax for something, a service that we do not provide, and this is very common in Dimapur. You have a lot of community and public and youth organizations who are engaged in this kind of activities. Okay, let's talk about blackmail, which is another form of extortion. Blackmail is a form of extortion in which, rather than physical harm, the threat is the exposure of damaging information related to the victim. In recent years, social media and information technology have resulted in the increase of extortion activities that is in the form of blackmail. For instance, revenge pornography is one. The threat of leaking private photographs or videos is also another example of blackmail, and I think you may have heard about the report of that Hollywood actress Jennifer Lawrence. I think there was a threat from a hacker who got into her computers and threatened to reveal all her photographs, private photographs, if she did not pay a certain amount of money. Unfortunately for the actress, I think the hacker released all her private photographs. That is also extortion here, using the method of blackmail. It has to be noted here, ladies and gentlemen, that it is not only by extra-state and non-state actors and criminal organizations who engage in extortion. It could be by hackers, people who want to make money off your Facebook too, on Twitter. It could be by community and public organizations, including students and youth organizations. They do that. I was just mentioning that, and this is very common, especially in the outskirts of the town, in village areas where community and youth organizations seem to have a lot of influence and say on highways and the roads. A non-government entity such as a union or an association imposing tax is also extortion, because that tax is not legal. It is not mandated by the government authorities or by any constitutional institution here. So if someone tells you that they have a right to your money without giving you any service of any kind, and I'm not talking about ideological services here, I'm talking about real world usable services like use of roads, proper roads, water supply, proper power supply, then there is no tax and you are not obligated to pay in any way. Corruption is also another form of extortion, although it generally does not involve the use of force. For instance, if a government worker demands a bribe from you so that he will be able to push your file forward to the next process, that is also extortion. So extortion is the use of force to exact an illegal monetary benefit, money or property, from someone who is not obligated or required to pay to the person demanding in any way, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's talk a little bit about how extortion affects you, your family, your friends and your community. Well, first thing, the violence and the threat of violence on people can be truly depressive, and it can cause a lot of trauma. I once had a friend who had a business in Dimapur. So every month, members of certain underground groups in Nagaland would come and demand. So some would demand 5,000, some would demand 10,000, some would demand 20 to 50,000 a month. So we have a lot of Naga nationalist organizations, and they have a lot of members who are, who are active in this. So you don't really know whether you should focus on your business or you should focus on your mental health because of the constant threat and the impression of threat that is always placed before you by people who want to exact demands from you. And then another anxiety for my friend was that there were always these councils and students unions and this and that associations coming over to ask for money, for taxes, for contributions, for free will contribution to this cause or that cause. Extortion in any form, that is a payment of monetary benefits to someone, not in exchange of any services, but because of a threat in one way or the other, or the threat of loss of value or reputation. It can cause a lot of damage to your mental health, ladies and gentlemen. That is one of the first impacts. Depression, anxiety, and trauma. And of course, for a lot of people in Nagaland over the past about 30 years, who have lost their family members because of extortion demands that went unfulfilled. I know a lot of people. I was with my uncle's place way back in the early 90s in Badambuguri. I know someone, a very big business person, a non-local, a very big business person, who was shot dead in front of his family in the morning when they were having food. I know a lot of people in Woka, those days, non-locals, who were shot dead. I used to have a classmate when I was studying in a school called Mount Sinai in Woka. So this classmate of mine had an elder brother who had a small shop in a place called NST Colony those days. So it seems some people came over and demanded money from him because he had a small shop and they thought he had money. So he did not have the money. You know what they did? They shot him, my classmate's brother. And for people like me, my age, we have a lot of stories about how a lot of people have lost their lives because they could not pay those people who demanded money from them. So these are things that will scar you, wound you, and damage you for the rest of your life if you have family members or relatives who have lost life because of extortion demands that went unfulfilled. So it is not just the loss of money, it is also the loss of your mental health and your future capital as a person to be able to live a meaningful life in the future. So to be able to live a meaningful life in the future, the wounds, the trauma that all these criminal activities cause you is going to damage your meaning of life in the first place. And I think this is one of the deepest concerns, especially in Latin countries like Mexico and Brazil, where criminal activities such as murder and gang networks and extortion is extremely high, and mental health situation in Brazil and Mexico is scary. If you could read it up on Google, I think that will give you a lot more of useful information than I can explain here. Extortion is different from the crime of robbery here, ladies and gentlemen. In robbery, the property is taken against your will and without the consent of the victim, without your consent, of course. But here's the difference. In extortion, the victim consents, although not willingly, and he consents to surrender money or property to you just as you demanded because of a threat that you have made to their life or property, or because of a threat that you are going to spoil that person's reputation. That's the difference between robbery and extortion. In robbery, the threat is immediate, and even if you don't will, they're going to take whatever they are demanding away from you that instant. But in extortion, while the threat is also immediate, you consent to it, but it is not out of your will, you are forced. That's the difference between extortion and robbery, ladies and gentlemen. Another differentiating factor is that the nature of the threat in robberies is limited to an immediate physical harm to the victim then and there. Immediate in robberies. But in extortion, on the other hand, it will have a lot of different aspects of threats to it, and the variety is great. It could be bishida amila gorden or town di birai thagiledo nachariwo. It could even be a threat to cause harm to you in the future. So the variety and the element of threat here is very, very wide. Let's talk about another impact of extortion, and this is one of the most visible impacts that we are facing in Nagaland. Increase in the price of commodities. Let's say Dimapur has about 5,000 shops, and all of them have to pay at least 5,000 to anyone asking from them the money, which is illegal. So in order to make up for the margin of loss by these business establishments, they are going to increase all the prices of their commodities, ladies and gentlemen, for which you have to pay more than the usual, or that is legal. So the impact on the general economic character of a society is reflected in higher instances of prices, higher instances of living conditions, and higher standards of living. So these are some of the immediate impacts, and it's not only just the business establishment, the retail establishments, the shops, it is also commercial, for instance, transport. So because you're bringing in commodities that have higher price value that was increased at the point of sale, at the point of wholesale, you are also eligible, or you are also entitled to charge more for the transportation of such goods. So when you put all this together, you are going to have a society where the prices of certain things that you have to buy to fulfill your life is higher. The price is much higher. So that is the reason why in Nagaland, there are a lot of people selling a kilogram of pork for 400, 350, and we have been seeing that in the price of fish, poultry, vegetables, anything, even the shekar, the shekar, the supari that you have. There are a lot of shops here selling shekar for above the MRP, because it seems there are syndicates in the wholesale community who are charging higher than the MRP, because they are being charged extra by whoever, governments or Naga nationalist groups, for those products. So that is how extortion affects you financially. And then another impact is the high cost of living. Recently I went to a small furniture store here in Dimapur, and I asked them what was the price for a 2+2 A 2+2 is two seaters, seats, sofas with a single seater. So he said, I think it was about 25,000 to 30,000, and I was shocked at the price, because normally it should be at the most 19 to 20 for a 2+2 And he told me that, we can do tadebra ne aru do anya them they get the mandia say arani boy to ari to bishede to council can be to poisa loi there, and then we have to pay for the fuel of the truck. So this is the reason why the price of these sofas are much higher. So that is how extortion impacts you. And then third, extortion encourages easy money culture. The more you have extortion activities in a community, it is easier for other criminal events, small time criminals, to start engaging in something major such as extortion activities. And over the course of years as a journalist in Nagaland, I have seen that a lot of small time criminals graduate onto big money activities such as extorting from wholesalers, big business organizations, and showrooms, especially vehicle showrooms, and even from banks and media and the press. So when you don't have a community where policing and enforcement is low, and when you have too many organizations and groups, whether they're government or public or nationalist groups, non-state and extra-state actors, then it is very easy for other criminal elements to also be encouraged, because kunmi kiba kuribole nai police kan nai aro dhurile bi thari de kun hobo. It encourages a culture. So The more there are extortion activities, there is a likelihood that more and more people will start engaging in what you are doing, and that is extracting money from citizens and people which do not belong to you, which you did not earn. So extortion also impacts a greater visibility even among let's say the criminal community in that sense, because this is just about a 20 to 25 minutes program. We cannot really discuss the complexities of extortion and its many aspects, but I guarantee you will be talking a lot more about extortion even at Hornbill TV in the days to come. We'll be talking more about it later on. We really hope that the government of Nagaland and the community leadership of the Naga people, the tribal hosts, the village council will seriously take very strong and serious look at the extortion culture in Nagaland. This is not a recent development, but this has been going on for many years, and it has started to have an impact on our lifestyle, in the character of our community, and especially among the youths too, because you have been filled with trauma. Your life has always been characterized by trauma and threat and violence and all these criminal activities that are not really checked by authorities is going to have an impact on their psyche too. And more than that, I think it's going to devalue our future if we do not keep this in check. I'm Al Nguli. See you next time.